Hello students, what I have for you is a lecture that we gave in class. It was a geography lecture with an interactive map on the smartboard. So if you were absent, I have it for you now. The way this is going to work is on my map I'm going to press buttons and it'll open up either a movie or a picture, and for the movies I will put them separately in the lesson for you. So we're talking about the geography of the New Testament. Before we look at the ancient geography of Israel, let's look at modern Israel. This is what Israel looks like today. And if you look on the map, you see these areas here that are sort of shaded a lighter color. These indicate areas of Palestinian occupation. The nation state of Israel was created after World War II, and so the Jews could reclaim their ancestral homeland. In order to do so, they had to take it from the Palestinians who were living there. And so the Palestinians really weren't willing to negotiate, and there was a war shortly after the creation of the nation state of Israel, and there's been a lot of violence fighting over the land ever since. So all these little black dots you see inside these shaded areas are Israeli settlements within the Palestinian territories. So you'll see the Dead Sea and the Jordan. This line here that's going all the way up, that's the Jordan River. On the other side, the river is the modern country of Jordan. Down here to the south, not working very well, down to the south is Egypt, and then up in the north you have Syria and Lebanon. A lot of violence happens up here in the Golan Heights because this northern part of the Golan Heights is actually controlled by Syria. So this is what Israel looks like today. Let's go back to Jesus' time and look at Israel. Okay, so you've all been given this map, and I want you to fill it in as we go along. It'll help you memorize the places we're at. So we're going to start at the south and work our way north. This is a body of water, and I'm going to draw blue because it's a body of water. This is the Dead Sea. And as you watch the videos, I want you to look at the topography. Notice how it looks down here in the southern area compared to the way it's going to look in the north and in the hill country in the middle. So at the Dead Sea, you're going to see a very desert, arid space. So I'm going to click on this point here, so this little point. If I click on it, it's going to open a video for you to learn more about the Dead Sea. Since you're watching this lecture at home, if you go to the next slide, you will find the video. So please watch that and notice the topography.
It was the ancient Romans who named this place the Dead Sea, a majestic body of deep blue water framed by remote desert cliffs, so salty that no fish or plants live in its mineral-rich waters. Some 1,300 feet below sea level, it is the lowest surface on Earth.
Basically, you see the layers.
You see literally the layers,
yeah.
Thousands of years.
Yeah.
Jackie Ben-Zakeen is with the Dead Sea Search and Rescue Team. He knows every inch of this place and showed us some of its many treasures.
Another thing that you're going to see that is unique to the Dead Sea is salt diamonds.
Right.
Salt diamonds are basically diamonds from salt that are created in the deep mud. They need mud, they need a lot of soil pressure, just like diamonds.
If you don't like diamonds, there are also salt pearls, rounded by the gentle waves of the sea.
You can actually find like perfectly pearls from salt.
Even the mud is precious. It is said to provide relief from skin ailments and arthritis. Its rejuvenating qualities have spawned a wide range of beauty products. Slathering yourself in Dead Sea mud is considered by many to be the ultimate spa treatment. But the water itself is perhaps the biggest attraction.
The Dead Sea is about 8 times saltier than the ocean, so the water is incredibly dense, and that makes it the easiest place in the world to stay afloat.
Bobbing on the water, breathing in the low-altitude, oxygen-rich air, one quickly relaxes.
And this is also part of the healing of the Dead Sea, I think. It calms you down. Really a good place to take care for yourself.
So it's a place for reflection as well.
Yes, yes, yes. We say that if you bring all the leaders of the world and put them in the Dead Sea for a week, it might look different.
But the Dead Sea is dying, disappearing at a rate of 1 yard every year. Across the landscape, a series of ruins from not-so-ancient history illustrates just how dramatic that retreat has been. Gidon Bromberg is the director of Friends of the Earth Middle East.
Well, this was the place to be on the shores of the Dead Sea, particularly in the mid-1950s, where people would be drinking coffee, literally facing the Dead Sea in front of them. You'd walk down the stairs, and at the bottom of the stairs, the Dead Sea was right there.
Wait, so the water came right up to these stairs?
Right up to the stairs.
Traditionally, the Dead Sea has been sustained by the waters of the River Jordan, where the Bible says the Israelites crossed into the Promised Land and where Jesus Christ was baptized. But in recent years, those waters have been diverted to Syria, Jordan, and Israel for irrigation.
And next to nothing today flows down that river. And in the very south, industry in Israel and in Jordan have turned the Dead Sea into an industrial quagmire, extracting the unique minerals of the Dead Sea, but in the process, drying up that Dead Sea.
Massive sinkholes now pockmark the landscape, turning large parts of the coast into danger zones. The disappearing water is also a threat to the rich ecosystem that has thrived on the edge of the Dead Sea for millennia. Rare species like the Jordan River's St. Peter's fish live in freshwater pools. As the Dead Sea disappears, that sweet water is getting sucked away with it. Ashira Greenberg works at the Ein Sukim Nature Reserve.
So what we're doing is we're moving all the different fish here and all the different species here in the water to new, bigger, wider pools at the southern part of the reserve, hoping we won't have to move them again.
That will only be possible if countries in the region can put aside their differences and agree on a plan to rehabilitate the Jordan River and limit the mineral industry.
We don't think that we'll ever bring the waters of the Dead Sea to splash back here on these steps. But what we are trying to do, what we really believe is possible, is to stabilize the Dead Sea, is to stop it continuing to drop every year.
To keep the Dead Sea alive, so that generations for thousands of years to come can continue to bob in its healing waters and lose themselves in the grandeur of its scenery.
All right, so in the south here, you just saw the Dead Sea and the story about the controversy over the use of the Dead Sea and its special properties. And you notice it's very desert down there. If you were to swing to the east and go that way, you'll end up in the Arabian Desert. So this area in southern Israel, if you go very far, if you go just a bit south of here, it's not on your map, but it's called Idumea. Idumea was the name of the region in the very south of Israel. And Idumea is important because that's where the Herodian family was from. You remember Herod the Great was the one who tried to kill Jesus when he was born, and also it's H-E-R-O-T. Also, you remember Herod Antipas, who was from Galilee in the north, participating in Jesus' trial in Luke's Gospel. The Idumeans were a mix of Arab and Jewish culture. So the people of Judea is up here, just north. The people of Judea didn't like them because they didn't like the intermarrying. Now, if you continue to go north, this region around this area was called Samaria. Oh, excuse me, my pen is not writing. Oh, fixed it. Samaria. So this is Samaria, and you remember that in 721, the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, and they forced the Samaritans to intermarry, so they became a culture that was mixed. And they had their own sort of special brand of Judaism. They actually had a temple up here in Samaria, and the Judeans came up and knocked it down because the Judeans considered the only place to worship God was its temple in Jerusalem. If we keep going north, this province up here is Galilee. And that's where Jesus was from. This shaded area here is Perea. And then this area here with this dotted line is Decapolis. So those are different regions of Palestine or Israel that were broken up after the Romans took control in order to make it easier to govern. Now, we had just looked at the Dead Sea. This little dot over here at the edge of the Dead Sea is a place called Masada. Masada. It was a fortress, and when the Romans sieged Jerusalem in the year 69-70, Jerusalem was a walled city. So when they did the siege, they basically left the people in the city to starve to death, and then, Then at Masada, some people had fled there, and the Romans laid siege to Masada, but it's on this big outcropping, so it's way up high. The Romans at first couldn't get to them, and what they did then was build a ramp, and the people at Masada took their last stand there. And if I click on this, let me move that circle for a second. You're going to see a video. There's no words. It's just some aerial views of the fortress. But I wanted to tell you the story of Masada, because if you've ever wondered, and see, this is going to go to the video. I'll have it for you in your on Moodle. If you've ever wondered why, for example, there's been a lot of tension in Israel over Hamas, why the Israelis bomb civilian homes, it has to do with this memory of Masada. If you see the sky bucket going up to the top of this outcropping, the Israelis have an expression, Masada, never again. Because the Jews who are, here's Masada, here's the fortifications, they remember what happened to them at Masada, and they will never allow another people to destroy them the way the Romans did. So if you look at it from the Israeli perspective, it's about a people of defeat, people who were defeated, never wanting to go through that again. Indeed, as I recall, the Israeli special forces are called Masada to this day. So this is the fortress at Masada, and you can continue just kind of looking at it in your flip lecture on the next slide. Okay, so you learned about Masada and got to see some of the fortifications there. If we move into Judea, and you have these 4 little dots right here in this area, these are some of the principal cities you'll remember from the Bible. If you click on, let's see, this one is Emmaus. This is where Jesus appeared to the disciples after his resurrection. Excuse me, let me try it again with my mouse. And this is, let me move that. This is Emmaus, modern Moza. It's 18 miles northwest of Jerusalem. And notice how the topography has changed. In this picture here, you're going to notice that it's green, and it's also very hilly. The center part of the country is sometimes called the hill country, and that's why they were able to take over this territory from the native Canaanites in the Old Testament. And in the book of Judges, it describes like a military takeover. It probably wasn't that dramatic. They probably slowly settled into areas that no one else wanted to live in, because with all these hills here, it's hard to farm. And you also notice it's green there. We were in southern Israel, and it was much browner down there. This is a Mediterranean climate, a lot like our own. And so if they have a rainy season, it'll get green in the spring and then dry in the summer. And then this road here, this is the road to Emmaus. This is the last piece of it that's still visible from ancient times. And this is the road that Jesus actually walked on when he was appearing to the disciples after his resurrection. So this is the road Jesus actually walked on. So imagine Jesus walking up this road and appearing to the disciples. What a neat thing. If we go back to our map, and like I said, the hill country is in Samaria in the center area. So we were over at Emmaus. Now let's go down. This is Bethlehem. Bethlehem. So this black dot here is Bethlehem. Oh, let me try again with my mouse. So Bethlehem, again, you see that classic hill country topography. And again, unlike southern Israel by the Dead Sea, this isn't quite as deserty. And this is Bethlehem. Jesus was born here because they went down from Galilee to register for the census. So this is where Jesus is born. Nowadays, there are very few Christians actually still living in Bethlehem. This church here is the Church of the Nativity, and we're going to see this in the documentary you're going to watch. And I wanted to show you this and where this was, because we're going to see this in the documentary we're going to watch. So if we go back, we've seen some of the places there. Now, the next 2 points here on the map, I have some videos for. So let me just delete Bethlehem for, let's do this. So this dot here is probably the most important one, and that's Jerusalem. So it's this one right there. That is the Holy City. It's both the political and the spiritual capital of the country, and it's where the temple was located. We know also that that's where Jesus died. So I'm going to click on this dot, and I'm going to move that for a second, and you're going to see a video, and you're just going to click on the next slide, and that next video is going to show you what the temple looked like in Jesus' time. I think they showed the girls a different video in class. I'll also include that one as well. But now just go to the next slide and watch the 2 videos.
In due course, the Romans appointed a man to rule Palestine on their behalf. His name was Herod, and he wasn't a Jew by birth. His family was Arab, from Idumea, though converted to Judaism. Herod had no particular love for the Jewish people nor their customs. What he did have was a lust for power, and a desire to build the greatest monuments ever witnessed on Palestinian soil. Here, on the Mediterranean coast of Palestine, Herod built one of his greatest projects, a vast new harbor using the latest in Greco-Roman technology.
The purpose of this vast, ambitious enterprise was to give Judea a large port, which would enable Herod to profit from the booming global economy of the Roman Empire under Augustus. The Jewish historian Josephus tells us that Herod's engineers dropped huge blocks of stone straight into the bay, thus creating a vast breakwater which would shelter the Roman cargo ships.
In Samaria, the ancient capital of the northern kingdom, Herod built another Roman city from scratch. Perhaps in an attempt to atone for the massive influx of pagan influence, Herod then decided to expand the Second Temple in Jerusalem, the center of Jewish worship and cultic sacrifice. He created a vast platform on top of Temple Mount. The Western Wall in Jerusalem, which today is the holiest place of Judaism, is in fact one of those mammoth Herodian supporting walls. The huge temple complex was accessible through two floating staircases, each supported by arches. A small portion of one of these arches, known as Robinson's Arch, is still visible today. In the late 1960s, archaeologists also uncovered the monumental stairs that once led to the double gate on the south. Passing through the vast outer courtyard, worshippers first entered the Court of Women. This is as far as Jewish females were allowed to go. From here, the Nicanor Gate led to the Court of the Israelites, where the temple stood, and where priests performed animal sacrifice on a large altar. The temple was still under construction in 30 AD, when Jesus visited the temple with his apostles, and it would not be completed until 30 years later, shortly before its destruction by Roman forces.
But we have to ask ourselves, how was Herod able to afford all this magnificent building activity? After all, Palestine had no gold or copper mines like North Africa, no silver or tin, no surplus of export quality wine or olive oil like Greece, or any of the rich timber of Lebanon. It had no capital resources to speak of, with one exception, the agricultural bounty of Lower Galilee.
Herod had discovered the wealth of Galilee while serving as its governor early in his career. Once Herod had been invested as the king of all Palestine, he knew where to get the money to feed his lust for glory. The farmers of Galilee.
At the crossroads of history, forged by centuries of conflict, is a place once believed to be the center of the world. Jerusalem. National Geographic Entertainment invites you to explore a land cherished by billions. For the first time on the world's largest screens, experience this ancient city through the stories of people who call it home. A mosaic of cultures and beliefs. ancient rituals. Secrets buried deep underground. Jerusalem. Coming soon to IMAX and giant screen theaters near you.
Okay, so we just left off from Jerusalem, and we're still in the area of Judea. And so we saw what Jerusalem looked like in ancient times and in modern times. The last city we're going to look at in Judea is Bethany. So it's the one that's right next to Jerusalem there. And Bethany is important because that's where Jesus' best friends live. And when we think of Jesus' best friends, I think we usually think of like the 12 dudes he was hanging out with. But he had close family friends that were like his best personal friends, and that was Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. So I have a little video for you. So if you're absent and you're watching this, it'll be on the next slide in the lesson. But I have a video that tells you a little bit about Bethany, shows you what it looks like today, and about why that place was so special for Jesus. Wait, did I hit record? Yeah. Oh, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Martha and Bethany.
A resurrection that foretells a greater resurrection. It happened here at Bethany. This is the place where the Lord wept over the death of his friend, Lazarus, and resurrected him. The place where the entire humanity of Christ emerges, and where he completes the final miracle of his passion and his death.
By the ancient church, it was always seen as a foreshadowing of the resurrection of Jesus, and in fact the liturgies of the Eastern churches recall this gospel just before entering into the Great Week, that is, into Holy Week. This resurrection unchains a negative reaction on the part of the heads of the people, which is precisely what leads to the death of Jesus.
In Bethany, today a village almost completely Muslim, stands a Franciscan basilica built on the ruins of earlier churches, the earliest dating from the 4th century. Next to this church, pilgrims descend to the ruins of what is traditionally venerated as the tomb of Lazarus. Although somewhat isolated and now inexorably surrounded by the Israeli security wall, the village of Bethany, or El Azarieh, which in Arabic means house of Lazarus, is still able to speak to the heart of the Christian pilgrim, who, come so far, feels himself reliving the hospitality and the friendship of those 3 siblings.
Bethany for Jesus was also the place in which he was able to find the sentiments of friendship, and I think that once again chapter 11 of John gives us an extraordinary passage with regard to this. Jesus, the Son of Man, the Son of God, when he knows that Lazarus is dead, begins to weep. Bethany is also the place of the humanity of Jesus. It is the place where Jesus shows his humanity, he who is the Son of God, but who also needs the love of man.
Jesus brings Lazarus back to life a few days before entering Jerusalem, where he would fulfill the destiny for which he was sent. And on the eastern slope of the Mount of Olives, on the ancient road which led to Bethany, stands the Franciscan sanctuary of Bethpage, restored to its present form in 1954. Here, both the encounter of Jesus with Mary and Martha before the resurrection of Lazarus and the beginning of Jesus' journey and triumphal entrance into Jerusalem are commemorated. And it is precisely from here that, every year on Palm Sunday, in the wake of a centuries-long tradition, the great procession of local Christians and pilgrims to Jerusalem unfurls.
All that which happens in the entrance, according to the narrative of the Synoptics, and according to the narrative of the 4th Gospel, is trying to tell us something about the messianic identity of Jesus. Jesus is the Messiah, the son of David. But he does not come to Jerusalem on war horses. He does not come to Jerusalem like the ancient kings of Israel. He selects another symbol. He chooses the symbol of a donkey, that is a humble animal, and this is why it recalls the prophecy of Zechariah. Therefore, in this gesture, he tells us also what type of Messiah he has come to present, and what Messiah God meant him to be.
Is my mic still on? I hope so. All right. So we just saw what Bethany was like. Now, if we go into the center and we start to go north, you end up in Samaria. So this is that hill country. So this would be all like hills. So Samaria is the name of the region. The people from there are the Samaritans. So there's also the city of Samaria, and you saw in that video about King Herod the Great. He built it into a Greco-Roman city. So I have some pictures for you. Hang on. Woo. So looking at Samaria, here again you see that topography, the hills of Samaria. And when we look at these hills and we think, think about all the nature references Jesus uses in the Gospel. He talks about the lilies of the valley, the birds of the air. So he is living in a place with a lot of natural beauty. He's not down in the Judean desert. And this is a map of the city of Samaria. And like they said, Herod built it to be a Greco-Roman city. So in this time, you have the Romans in control of Palestine. And what happened is something we call Hellenization. Hellenization is when people adopt Greco-Roman culture, especially the first part of creating a culture is usually the language and religion. So those are two of the definitive characteristics of any culture you're looking at. So Hellenization, when the Romans take over, Herod is a Hellenizer. He wants everything to be Greco-Roman. These are the guys in charge. Even though he's Jewish, he's sort of, changing things. And a lot of the Jews who are faithful, who stayed faithful during the exile and return, were very hurt by this. Especially because a lot of what the Hellenizers do is they abandon traditional Jewish customs. So in Samaria, you see this Roman wall around it. You see some of the classic features of Roman cities. You have a forum. You have a stadium. You have a temple here. And this is not a temple to God. This is a temple to a Greco-Roman god. So imagine, here's a Roman theater, an Acropolis. You have all these different features of a Roman city. And for the Jews watching this happen, they had to question, do we go with the flow and forget our old ways and become Hellenized, or do we make a stand and remain faithful to our tradition? And that was sort of the question that they faced at that time. So if we go back to our map, up here, this is Caesarea, and I have to look at my map because I always spell it wrong. Here on the coast, it's named after Caesar. Herod built Caesarea, and he named it after Caesar. It's a port city. Something that you should know about Caesarea is Pilate often stayed there. Pilate became the governor of Judea after Herod the Great's son almost incited a revolt, but he hated it there. He didn't like the Jews. So he usually stayed up at Caesarea, and you'll see why. It's beautiful, rather than staying down in Judea. So let me show you the port city of Caesarea. So this is a port that was built by Herod the Great, and Herod the Great, just so you know, he's the guy who tried to kill Jesus when he was a baby. Let me turn this sound off because it's going to mess up my video. So this is Caesarea. So Herod built this. There were palaces there, and you're going to see the port of Caesarea. He built that himself. He had laborers actually, see, this is the harbor. That harbor's not natural. They created that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in your way. So that harbor you see there, that was all created by Herod the Great. And you can see the excavations of Caesarea. His palace is there. Pilate stayed there. And let me just fast forward. We don't need to see the sushi restaurant. So as they show you, I wanted you guys to see the Greco-Roman architecture. You see the columns, classic Greco-Roman architecture, and you're going to see a stadium. Just like horse races we have today, we had a stadium there for horse and chariot races. So it's down here. You'll see that classic shape. And here you can see they're still doing excavations there. And you can see some of the tile on the floor. It must have been beautiful when it was to see it in Jesus' time. We could probably go and get an architectural model. See the stadium here? You can see it's that classic shape of a stadium. And so this is the stadium where they would have had, you know, events and races, and so very much in the style of Greco-Roman architecture. But to many of the faithful Jews, this was an affront. This is about, you know, this is about losing who you really were. And they hated Herod for that. Plus, Herod overtaxed them in order to build all this stuff. So that's Caesarea. And we'll go back to our map. Now we're up into Galilee. So this region here that I have outlined in black, this is the Galilee. There's the Sea of Galilee. This little dot here was for the Jezreel Valley. I don't think I'm going to show you that one. I think we're getting too many things here. So let me name these cities, and then we'll look at them. This is the one at the top on the coast of the Sea of Galilee is Capernaum, and I can't spell it, so let me look at my map. No. Capernaum is important because Jesus and the disciples spent a lot of time there. That's where Peter's from. Peter lived in Capernaum. And then over here in sort of the middle, you have Nazareth. Why is Nazareth important? That's where Jesus lived, right? Jesus' family's from Nazareth. He's born in Bethlehem, but grows up in Nazareth. And then there's Cana up here. Cana is where Jesus has his first miracle in the Gospel of John. So let's look at Cana, and then we'll look at the others. So Cana, so here again, that hilly country, a little drier, must be in the summer. This is a church that was dedicated to Jesus and his first miracle. If we take a look at Nazareth, what did Nazareth look like? This is Nazareth. This is where Jesus grew up. Yes. What was the miracle at Cana? It was the changing water into wine. And Jesus, in John's Gospel, that was the first miracle. That's where he did it, in Cana. And so this is Nazareth. Now remember, when we read about Jesus going down from Galilee, down to Jerusalem where he meets his death, that's 63 miles. That's about an hour and 50-minute car drive if you drive it. It's sort of like driving to LA and back. So imagine walking all that way. And this is what Nazareth looks like today. These spires you see, those are called minarets. Those tell us that that's a Muslim mosque there. Just like Bethlehem, this area is occupied by the Palestinians, so mainly a Muslim population. A mosque is the house of worship for Muslims. And we know this is a mosque. The reason why is these two spires are minarets, and from there they do the call to prayer. So Muslims pray 5 times a day, so that when it's time for them to pray, they'll do the call to prayer, and everyone stops whatever they're doing, you get out your prayer rug, you face Mecca, and you do your prayers. So it's one of the kind of neat things that I think is really nice about Islam, is they pray 5 times a day, and they take it super seriously. You can actually buy prayer alarm clocks. My sister has one she got in Iraq that you could program to remind you to pray. So this is where Jesus grew up and hung out with his boys. Yeah, him and the apostles, they're like a little gang. Him and the 12 apostles. My last thing I want to show you is the Sea of Galilee. Think about all the times we hear Jesus doing stuff at the Sea of Galilee, calming the storm, going out in the boat and finding the apostles. This is where he found them. When he saw Peter the fisherman fishing, he said, "Come with me, I'll make you a fisher of men," instead of just a fisherman. So this is the last thing. So I'm going to click on this video. If you're watching this for the Flip lecture, I'll put it in. It'll be on the next slide. So